You know, if anybody had told you a year ago that you would have been ... well, I just didn't think I was going to see this.
Robert Redford is known for his near-flawless career in carefully chosen roles, but even he has a few regrets. In 1980, he made a film that looked promising on paper but turned into something he would rather forget, and according to those close to him, it all had to do with her. So what really happened behind the scenes, and why does Redford still avoid talking about it? To understand, it helps to look at his early life. Born on August 18, 1936, in Santa Monica, California, Redford grew up in a modest, working-class neighborhood where his father worked as a milkman-turned-accountant and his mother was a homemaker. Though raised in sunny California, his childhood wasn't easy. He struggled in school, often clashed with authority, and was described by teachers as intelligent but stubborn. His creative side was encouraged by his mother, whose death when he was still a teenager deeply affected him and shaped the private, serious personality he carried into adulthood. After a rebellious phase in early adulthood, briefly attending the University of Colorado before dropping out due to poor grades and too much partying, he traveled through Europe and later returned to the U.S. to study acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, as well as painting at Pratt Institute. The stage soon pulled him in, and his first real success came in the early 1960s when he starred in Neil Simon's Bayford in the Park on Broadway, earning praise for his charm, good looks, and natural style. From there, television roles followed, building his reputation as a thoughtful and reliable actor. His breakthrough in film arrived in 1969 with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where his pairing with Paul Newman catapulted him to stardom. Redford's quiet intensity balanced Newman's playfulness, and the chemistry made him a household name. Over the next few years, he starred in The Way We Were opposite Barbra Streisand, reunited with Newman in The Sting, and took on the role of journalist Bob Woodward in All the President's Men. These performances cemented his image as Hollywood's golden boy, handsome, talented, and charismatic. But behind the image was a man determined to control every part of the creative process. Redford paid close attention to scripts, characters, and editing, sometimes recutting scenes himself or suggesting major changes. While some saw this as dedication, others found him controlling or difficult. As his fame grew, he became increasingly selective, turning down major projects he felt lacked meaning or strong creative backing, prioritizing purpose over profit in an industry driven by box office numbers. This perfectionism often led to clashes with producers and directors, as well as tension with co-stars who preferred a looser, more collaborative approach. Redford's disciplined, structured style didn't always mesh with others, but his quiet confidence and sharp instincts kept him respected and in control of his career. Expanding his reach, he turned to directing, and his debut film, Ordinary People, earned him the Academy Award for Best Director, proving that his drive for control and precision was more than justified. It was a key to his enduring success. This proved that his attention to detail and strong will weren't just personality traits. They were part of his success. Redford's ability to balance public charm with private control is part of what made him so fascinating. He was never the loudest voice in the room, but he usually had the final say. People who worked with him often said they respected him, even if they didn't always agree with him. He wasn't interested in Hollywood politics or gossip. He wanted to make good films on his own terms. Redford's rise to fame wasn't just about talent. It was about discipline, vision, and the quiet power of knowing what you want and sticking to it. He built his career carefully, avoiding scandals and protecting his privacy while staying fully involved in the work that mattered to him. But not everyone appreciated his style, and some of the biggest names in Hollywood found it difficult to work with him. Love and turmoil defined much of his private life. Robert Redford has always been known as a private and thoughtful man. While the world saw him as a Hollywood icon, handsome, talented, and successful, his personal life told a more complex story. He has been married twice, and both relationships revealed different sides of him. His first marriage lasted almost 3 decades but was marked by growing distance and emotional strain, while his second marriage, much later in life, seemed more peaceful and steady. Looking at these 2 marriages helps us understand Redford not just as an actor, but as a man who often struggled to balance love, fame, and his need for independence. He married his first wife, Lola Van Wagen, in 1958, when he was still a young and struggling actor searching for his place in the world. Lola, a Mormon from Utah with a strong sense of family and stability, believed in him, supported his dreams, and stood by his side as he worked to build his career. The early years of their marriage were filled with hope and the kind of support many artists needed to start. They had 4 children together, though one died as an infant, a tragedy that deeply affected them both. At that time, Redford wasn't yet famous, taking small roles on stage and slowly gaining attention. Lola managed a home, raised the children, and gave Redford the space to focus on his work. She was his foundation while he built something bigger. But as his fame exploded in the late 1960s and early 1970s, especially after Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969, everything changed. Suddenly, he was pulled in many directions: film sets, media attention, social events, and endless opportunities, while Lola remained out of the spotlight. The pressure of fame widened the gap between them. Redford threw himself into his projects with complete dedication, which often meant long hours and long absences. Lola, once his emotional anchor, began to feel like a background figure in his busy life. Emotional distance grew, and rumors of his infidelity added further strain. Though Redford rarely addressed such claims, those close to him suggested that the constant travel and temptations of Hollywood made fidelity difficult. At the same time, he became more closed off emotionally, guarding his privacy even from those nearest to him. Eventually, the distance proved too much. In 1985, after 27 years of marriage, Redford and Lola divorced quietly and respectfully, without public scandal. She moved on to pursue her own environmental and historical research, while he continued to guard his private life. Years later, he found love again, but in a very different way. In the mid-1990s, he met Sybil Sagers, a German-born artist who shared his love for nature and creativity. Their relationship grew slowly and quietly, a contrast to his earlier fast-paced Hollywood years. They lived together for over 2 decades before marrying in 2018. Sybil was not part of Hollywood, which suited Redford perfectly. Calm, artistic, and with her own career as a painter, she shared his values and his preference for a slower lifestyle. By then, Redford had stepped back from the spotlight, choosing projects carefully, spending time at his Utah ranch, and dedicating himself to environmental causes. Sybil supported this quieter life, and together they built a peaceful routine that gave Redford the privacy he had always wanted. Many noticed that he seemed far more at ease in this second partnership. There was less pressure, less public attention, and more emotional balance. While his first marriage had carried the energy and ambition of a man striving to build his career, his second reflected a man who had already achieved his goals and now longed for peace. Sybil provided that, and their relationship remained strong and steady. Yet while his personal life eventually found stability, not all of Redford's professional relationships were so smooth. Some of his most intense clashes came with the biggest stars in Hollywood. One of the most famous was his complicated dynamic with Paul Newman. Together, Redford and Newman created one of Hollywood's most beloved on-screen partnerships. Their chemistry in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was natural, charming, and full of energy, Newman's relaxed confidence playing perfectly against Redford's quieter, more serious presence. The film's success turned them into one of the most iconic duos in movie history, and a few years later, they reunited for The Sting, another massive hit that won multiple Academy Awards and cemented their place as a legendary pair. On the surface, their friendship seemed effortless. They respected each other, enjoyed working together, and even shared jokes and pranks on set. But behind the scenes, tension slowly began to surface. As Redford's fame grew, he became more protective of his image and increasingly involved in the creative side of filmmaking. Newman, already a major star by the 1960s, was accustomed to leading roles and top billing. When Butch Cassidy was released, there was quiet disagreement over whose name should appear first in the credits. Newman got top billing, but Redford's performance elevated the film so strongly that many believed he deserved equal credit. That moment marked the beginning of a subtle but lasting competitive dynamic. In the 1970s, Redford's interest in directing and creative control only deepened. He wanted more than acting. He wanted to shape entire stories. Newman, however, had always been the central figure in his own projects, confident and used to being the leader. Their differing views on their roles in Hollywood created quiet distance. Although there was never a public falling out, the two never made another film together. They continued to speak highly of each other in interviews, but their friendship evolved into something more distant and formal. Redford later admitted that life and work pulled them in different directions. When Newman died in 2008, Redford honored him warmly, calling him a great friend and a brilliant actor. The respect never faded, but the closeness did. Their partnership gave audiences two unforgettable films, but their friendship itself did not endure in the same way. By contrast, Redford's clash with Jack Nicholson revealed a sharper, more direct rivalry. In the 1970s, both men were among the biggest names in Hollywood, yet they couldn't have been more different. Redford was calm, polished, and disciplined. Nicholson was loud, wild, and unpredictable. Though never open enemies, their opposing personalities, acting styles, and approaches to filmmaking created years of quiet tension. One of the clearest examples came when both were considered for the role of Jay Gatsby in The Great Gatsby. The part was highly coveted, and though Nicholson was seriously considered, Redford ultimately won it. Some reports suggested Nicholson was frustrated by losing the role to Redford, whom he dismissed as too stiff for the part. Redford, for his part, disapproved of Nicholson's unpredictable behavior, preferring a focused, professional environment built on preparation and discipline. Redford didn't enjoy surprises on set and expected everyone to take the work as seriously as he did. Nicholson, however, thrived in chaos. He liked to improvise, change lines, and shift the energy of a scene without warning. To some directors, this spontaneity was exciting and fresh, but to Redford, it felt messy and uncontrolled. Their differences deepened when Nicholson, behind the scenes, often made harsh remarks. Though they never worked together in a major film, those close to Nicholson claimed he once called Redford wooden, mocking his quiet, serious image and suggesting he lacked emotional range. The comments spread, and while Redford never responded publicly, he was known to quietly distance himself from actors who disrespected him. In truth, the two men represented different schools of acting. Redford thrived in structured films where precision, subtlety, and planning mattered most, while Nicholson embodied chaos, emotion, and freedom, delivering wild, powerful performances in works like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and The Shining. Producers often had to choose between them, depending on whether they wanted quiet depth or explosive unpredictability. It was unlikely they would ever work well together, and in the end, they didn't. Redford avoided direct conflict, but he wasn't afraid to walk away from actors he couldn't work with, and Nicholson was one of them. His next silent standoff came with another intense actor, Gene Hackman. Like Redford, Hackman was one of the most respected actors of his generation, both known for their talent and dedication. Yet in personality and values, they couldn't have been more different. Redford's calm, private presence contrasted sharply with Hackman's raw, sometimes aggressive intensity. While Redford preferred quiet professionalism, Hackman brought forceful energy to his roles, which could make him brilliant but also difficult to work with. Redford reportedly found Hackman abrasive and unpredictable, while Hackman viewed Redford as polished to the point of arrogance. Coming from a working-class background, Hackman distrusted Hollywood elites and thought actors like Redford represented an artificial, out-of-touch side of the industry. Though Hackman never called him out directly, people close to him said his criticisms of cold and controlling stars were widely believed to be aimed at Redford. The two had opportunities to collaborate. Redford even offered Hackman roles in A River Runs Through It in Quiz Show, but Hackman declined, uninterested in Redford's directing style or the quieter, reflective tone of his films. Hackman gravitated toward gritty, emotionally intense work, while Redford leaned toward thoughtful, controlled storytelling. Beyond creative differences, Hackman openly disliked the trappings of Hollywood, award shows, networking, and public appearances, all of which Redford, despite his privacy, was still deeply tied to through Sundance and his industry influence. To Hackman, Redford symbolized the elite world he wanted no part of. Despite this, there was never a public feud. Neither man openly criticized the other, but those in the industry knew they simply didn't mix. They respected each other from afar, but collaboration was never in the cards. It wasn't about one fight or incident. It was a quiet clash of personalities, values, and artistic vision. Robert Redford and Barbra Streisand shared one of the most iconic romantic pairings in film history with The Way We Were, but behind the scenes their working relationship was far from warm. The movie told the story of two opposites, a political activist and a laid-back writer, falling in and out of love, and while their on-screen chemistry was undeniable, off-screen things were tense, cold, and complicated. Redford had not been the first choice for Hubble Gardner, but Streisand, heavily involved in the project's development, believed only he could make the love story feel authentic. Redford was hesitant, worried that the film would become too centered on Streisand, who was known for her strong personality and control over her projects, and he only agreed after conditions were met, including script revisions to give Hubble more depth and balance. From the start, their artistic approaches clashed. Streisand immersed herself emotionally, often improvising and pushing for more dramatic moments, while Redford preferred subtlety, control, and sticking to the script. He found her exhausting and self-absorbed at times, while she thought him too distant and emotionally unavailable. Their connection existed only when cameras were rolling. Once scenes ended, they went their separate ways. Despite the tension, The Way We Were became a huge success, with audiences mistaking professional friction for deep chemistry. Afterward, fans clamored for a reunion, and Streisand herself pushed for a sequel or new project, convinced their magic could strike again. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, she pitched ideas and reworked scripts, but Redford always declined, insisting one film was enough. For him, the experience had been draining, while Streisand admitted years later that his refusal hurt her deeply. She felt a lasting emotional connection to both the story and his character, while he valued calm, privacy, and control, making collaboration with her too overwhelming. Still, neither ever spoke badly of the other. Streisand often praised Redford as natural and perfect for Hubble, and Redford acknowledged her as a gifted actress who brought powerful emotion to the screen. Professionally, they admired one another, but emotionally they remained worlds apart, explaining why one of Hollywood's most beloved on-screen couples never reunited.